All right, so I think that everything should be all right. Oh, no, I'm getting another note. Sorry, everyone. Just folks having trouble getting into the meeting. Okay, well, we'll get started. I think that folks are going to be joining the meeting shortly if they haven't already. So we can get started. So I know that we had a couple of questions, and I'll start with, I guess, the first one, which is really on this second slide, which is, please note that the session is being recorded. It will be made available, and we will communicate exactly where that will be made available as well. So I know that that was a question that has been answered. Okay. Now, to begin, we acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. All right, so before we begin, I want to just do a little bit of housekeeping just to let folks know who are joining us by phone or by Zoom on the computer, just how things are going to roll this evening. So first and foremost, translation lines are available. The dial-in numbers for the translation lines have been made available previously on the poster, but here they are again. I will leave them up for 30 or so seconds. So if you need to join a translation line, please record the number and the PIN. And just as a note, thank you to the Yonge Street Mission and TCH for helping coordinate all of the translators and the lines today as well. Okay. The second housekeeping item is, we have a Q&A function that we're using this evening. So please share your questions using the Q&A function and upvote questions by clicking the like button, and that will give us an understanding of which questions you as an audience want to have answered most. And that will really help us when we come to the question period toward the end of the evening. The last piece here is related to those of you that are calling in via telephone. Press *9 to raise your hand during the question period, and then we will be able to unmute you so that you can ask your question. Okay, *9. I'll go over these again later, but if you're noting it down, *9 during the question period if you are on the phone and would like to raise your hand. And as we're going on, I realized that I've forgotten to introduce myself, so I'm going to do that very quickly. Hi, everyone. I'm Fatima Staya with the Daniels Corporation, a manager of social impact. I'm emceeing this evening, so I won't take up too much of your time. We're going to jump into the real report back of the evening. And we're going to be starting with community and industry speakers, so including from the Regent Park Neighbourhood Association, other sort of construction industry stakeholders. We also have 51 Division here, and of course the Daniels Corporation. So we'll be speaking and then going into the more in-depth report back that Daniels has prepared. Okay, so to begin, I'm going to introduce Marlene, who is an RPNA member and co-chair, in fact, and a resident in the community.
Hi, as she said, I'm Marlene DeGeneva, and along with Lloyd Pike, we are the co-chairs of the RPNA, which is the Regent Park Neighbourhood Association. Can you give me the next slide, please? There we go. In the 1970s, the immigrating Caribbean community moved into Regent Park, significantly increasing the number of Black residents. However, the composition of the community, which threatened the former status quo of white resident majority and destabilizing their previous experience of racial dominance. This shift in demographics also caused divisive tensions within the community, due in part to cultural differences between white Canadian-born residents and the emerging Caribbean residents' cultural norms, which ultimately exposed an undercurrent of anti-Black racial bias and discrimination directed mostly towards young men living in Regent Park, who were stigmatized, harassed, disproportionately arrested, and criminalized based on their Black skin identity. I'll say that again. They were stigmatized, harassed, disproportionately arrested, and criminalized based upon their Black skin identity. Today, unfortunately, many young Black men in Regent Park are still facing similar anti-Black racist experiences. In 2020, this is unacceptable. On June 26, 2020, a hanging noose was found on a Daniels construction site located at the corner of Dundas Street East and Sumac Street in Regent Park. In the week following this crime incident, the Regent Park Neighborhood Association reached out to Mitchell Cohen, president and CEO of Daniels, requesting information on Daniels' response to the incident, including the all-workers meeting that took place on DuEast's construction site on June 29th, Daniels' international investigation, corporate efforts to end systemic racism within the organization, and the construction industry.
Thank you, Marlene. We're going to move on to Gail Lynch.
Please let me introduce Gail Lynch. She's a member of the leadership team at the at your RPNA. Gail?
Gail, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Marlene, and thank you, Fatima, as well. Yes, my name is Gail. I am a Black immigrant. I was born in a former slave village, the plantation house at the top of the dirt road, cane fields on the left and the right side, and slave huts in the middle. My grandmother and great-grandmother worked on the same former sugarcane slave plantation. I am a product of slavery. It has shaped part of my life. It has shaped a part of your life as well. For your own self, you'll have to decide how. I grew up in a time post-slavery where the elders in my village, Black men and women who worked for Caucasian people, still called them the master and the missus. When I migrated to Canada, I searched for a village to belong to, from Côte-de-Neige and LaSalle in Montreal, to Weston in North York, New Toronto in Etobicoke, St. Lawrence in Toronto. Regent Park is my village. Good night to everyone and welcome to our village and community, Regent Park. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. It starts with the systemic changes. Programs don't fix people. People fix people. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gail. Now I'm going to introduce Councillor Wong-Tam, who is the Toronto City Councillor for Ward 13.
Thank you so much, Fatima, for the introduction, and to all the speakers who spoke before me. Thank you for sharing your remarks, but also setting the stage for the conversation. And this conversation is so critically important. I want to thank the Regent Park Neighbourhood Association, the Daniels Corporation, and all those involved in helping prepare us for this discussion. This discussion is one that is of critical importance, just because of the fact that a hanging noose is such a potent symbol of slavery and anti-Black racism, and one that is really, to me, a representation of a history and also of the present that is still very violent and pervasive with us today. And I can't imagine what it would feel like to actually, just thinking about Gail's remarks just now, about what that hanging noose means today, based on her own very specific and unique history. And thank you, Gail, for placing that history before us, because I think it really helps contextualize the severity and the gravity of the situation, that one that we should not necessarily brush aside. And that's why I'm so glad that we're here today for this conversation. Combating racism and anti-Black racism is not just work for Daniels, and it's not just work for the construction sector. It's not just work for this community. It is also the work that belongs in governments. And I'm very moved by the fact that we've had an opportunity now in the City of Toronto to shift that dial to talk about what eradicating racism looks like, and in particular, anti-Black racism. And during the COVID pandemic in particular, I think we've seen the disproportionate impacts, the decimation and harm of structural racism as it descends on communities that are racialized, Black, Indigenous, as well as poor, low income. And of course, Regent Park is some of those things, and it's something that I know has really been manifest itself in ways that have created a lot of additional harm. The City of Toronto remains committed to addressing anti-Black racism. We do this with the city staff by creating the Anti-Black Racism Unit. And during the COVID period, we've actually established a Black Resilience Cluster, which is comprised of 20 different Black leading organizations that have been responding with the city side by side to the COVID pandemic. It hasn't been easy, and it certainly has highlighted the harm and the fiscal gaps that exist in our community, the social and as well as health inequities. And although the work is still ongoing, I know that that work has to reach right into Regent Park, in addition to the other communities across Toronto that it serves. There has been allocations of funding specifically for the Black community that has been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. We've started to collect race-based data, which I think is critically important, the disaggregated data piece, understanding where we are in terms of a baseline comprehension of the statistics today will allow us to better enhance our programs and to actually make service adjustments so we can reach larger and more communities in the days, months, and years ahead. The noose incident at Regent, and sorry, that's my little boy who's crying for me. The noose incident at Regent is one that didn't happen in isolation. It happened because of the pervasiveness of systemic racism and structural racism. I want to commend Daniels, if I just take 1 minute to say this, is I've had a chance to read their report. And I must say that for one company to take such a swift approach and to dive so deep and make a commitment to keep going and doing and to sustain that work is something that I don't think I've seen in many other sectors. There has been oftentimes the brushing of racism and anti-Black racism under the table, a bit of a patronizing pat on the head, and there still remains much more work to do. But Daniels, to the team at Daniels, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for not brushing this under the rug, for not pushing this aside, and for committing to me and to the community, which I know you've done publicly on several occasions, that this is something that you will tackle and continue to commit to reducing and eradicating in your work, in the corporation, in the sector as well as in the industry. And I want to say thank you for that.
Thanks, Councillor Wong-Tam. So I'm actually going to diverge just briefly, very quickly. I know that Councillor Wong-Tam may have to leave before question period, and there was a question that RPNA wanted to ask you specifically around the progress that the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit at the City of Toronto has achieved since their creation, and the impact that it'll have on the Regent Park community. If you want to take a minute to answer that.
Yes, thank you, Fatima, and thank you to RPNA for your questions, and also thanks to you for keeping your foot on the pedal to make sure that this issue doesn't necessarily get pushed aside. The City of Toronto has an anti-Black racism strategy, the AND Action Plan. It's now in its second year. There were a total of 22 recommendations, and the strategy and action plan was broken up into 5 specific categories, from youth and child development to health and community services to job opportunities and income supports, policing and the justice system, something that we've spoken about quite at length, big citywide debate over the summer months, as well as creating job opportunities, as well as community engagement and Black leadership. That report and action plan continues to make its way through the corporation, and we have a partnership and accountability table that's been established, which is comprised of community members, all leading from Black organizations who are actually working with the City of Toronto's Anti-Black Racism Unit to make sure that the action plan is operationalized, which means a huge organizational shift in order for us to eradicate anti-Black racism and racism and all forms of discrimination in the corporation, which means that when we deliver services to residents, regardless of where they are in the city, their postal code, their skin color, their gender, we want to be able to do it in a way that is accessible. And that means that we actually have to eliminate the barriers that exist for people to access city services. So that work continues, and there has been some concrete examples that I can share with you. We do this work with Taboo, which is a community health organization that's situated in Malvern. We do this with C Center, which is Young Black Professionals organization that works to empower young people through entrepreneurship. And we do this with organizations such as African Food Basket, which actually improves food access for Black communities, as well as Eva's Place. So a lot of the work that is being done in partnership with organizations that are Black-led, because we know that the city does not have the answers, and in no way will we be able to really address anti-Black racism if we don't work with our partners in the community that actually are in the trenches, speaking to people, connecting with them day in and day out, and then helping to bring that conduit of communication, which I think is so critically important, so that their voices can be heard and centered in decision-making and policy-making at City Hall. So it's a two-way street with resources and a staff unit at the City of Toronto with an accountability table that wraps around all of that. And then finally, the Confronting Anti-Black Racism unit at the city has also been working locally with the Nelson Mandela Park Public School, and they've been working with the school in units to address the broader, more systemic issue, and actually working with the school to create anti-Black racism training specifically based on community experiences and knowledge. And there can be more, but I recognize that you said 1 minute, and I realize I probably just stretched it into 3. So Fatima, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to RPNA for the question. Lula Hassan, who is my representative in Regent Park, many of you will know her. She is with you for the rest of the evening. At 6:30, I have to bounce off to another virtual room, unfortunately. But Lula will be taking notes, and if there's any questions that I've not been able to address, or if there's follow-up comments for myself as the local councillor, please let us know, and please let Lula know, and she'll make sure that we address it shortly afterwards. Thank you very much again.
Thanks, Councillor Wong-Tam. Thanks very much. Now I'm going to welcome Mitchell Cohen from the Daniels Corporation. Mitchell.
Thank you, Fatima. And thank you, Kristyn, for those kind words about the work that we've been doing over the last couple of months. And thanks to everyone at RPNA. Gail, for your words, really setting the stage, and Marlene as well, thank you for that. You know, we're here because it's so important to be here tonight, to follow up the hate crime that happened on our DuEastCondominiums site back on June 26th. We were totally sickened by that incident, the incident that occurred on our site, on our watch. And we understand and we really appreciate how profoundly that this has impacted members of the Regent Park community. This hate crime, this obvious act of racism against the Black community has also impacted all of us at Daniels. It has been a wake-up call for me and for every member of our team. It's also given us tremendous determination to use every ounce of our energy to speak out loudly against racism, against prejudice, and against discrimination in all of its forms. I personally and deeply regret that it took this unfortunate event, this hanging noose, for us to take action, to raise our voice as you have raised yours against anti-Black racism. Over the course of the balance of the evening, we will outline the actions we've taken so far, but we'll also outline our plans to use the power of our business platform to influence and to work with our subcontractors, our consultants, the unions, and our industry associations, many of whom have joined us here this evening. We have listened very carefully to your voices, to the voices of this community over the past 15 years. You have truly provided the roadmap, informing our work every step of the way and keeping us focused on supporting the development of an inclusive community. Your input, for example, goes way back, resulted in the big park and the aquatic center being built in phase 2 rather than in phase 5 as intended in the original plan. Your voices also led us collectively, Toronto Community Housing and ourselves, the city, to redraw the plans for phases 2 and 3 and to raise the funding required to create an arts and cultural center and the Regent Park athletic grounds. Most significantly though, over the past 5 months, you have inspired us to look deeply at the unconscious biases within ourselves and within our organization, as well as to shout from the rooftops that Black lives matter. Now, as some of you may know, we are not a public company. We're a private corporation. This means that we don't have a board of directors determining our strategies or our policies. Rather, we are a small group of owners charting a path forward and course correcting when we need to change course. And we all recognize now, most importantly, we recognize that change is needed right now and in the long term, to better confront racism and to create conditions for Black and racialized individuals to not only be represented, but to thrive within our organization, in our industry, and in our communities. As the president and CEO of Daniels, and as the majority owner of our company, I have been with you on the ground in Regent Park from the outset, listening deeply to your concerns, as well as to your goals for this remarkable community. And as we look forward, and we do look forward, to being with you for many, many more years to come, we will continue to listen, we will continue to learn, and we will continue to grow. And we will continue to be better stewards of diversity and inclusion, demonstrating zero tolerance for racism with every breath we take. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitchell. Now I'd like to introduce Barry Thomas and Evelyn Amponsah. Barry, as many of you know, is the Assistant General Manager of Operations. Regent Park knows him well. And introducing Evelyn, who is the Manager of Strategy for the Confronting Anti-Black Racism unit at Toronto Community Housing.
Good evening, friends and family in Regent Park. It's good to be with you once more. First and foremost, I need to bring you apologies from our CEO and COO, Kevin Marshman and Sheila Penny, who are both at other chat rooms as we speak. This event is one of the things that touches me to my core. As most of you who have worked with me in the last 10 years in Regent Park know, that I'm originally from South Africa, and that I was deeply involved in the anti-apartheid struggle. In fact, it's that got me kicked out of South Africa and landed in Canada in 1975. I've been involved in Regent Park since 1983 as a young second-year university student working at Dixon Hall. I've then participated in quite a few parties and get-togethers in Regent Park through the years before I landed there as the executive director, the operating unit manager in 2010. So this is for me, not just a work issue. This is a family matter. And the symbolism of a noose in one of the buildings that we are building to redevelop and rebuild Regent Park is extremely disheartening and sad. The upside is that I immediately called Mitchell Cohen when I heard about this and immediately got a response from him, which I expected. And I wouldn't expect anything less, because the partnership that I've been party to with Daniels and Mitchell Cohen and the people you see on this Zoom this evening, Gila and Fatima and so on, are people that I know intimately and know that we will collectively put our best foot forward. We only have a few minutes, so I'm not going to take up all the time, but I would like to introduce Evelyn Amponsah, who's just joined us from the City of Toronto and is leading TCHE through our own Combating Anti-Black Racism strategy. So without any further ado, Evelyn.
Thanks, Barry. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me some space on this call. I wanted to jump on the call and just speak to residents and I think bring folks into some of the work that is currently being done at TCHC around confronting anti-Black racism. While we don't have a unit like the one that exists at the city, a current unit, we're in the process of developing a strategy that's going to allow us to confront anti-Black racism from the lens of being a social housing provider. And it's really important for me to add that piece because I think that as one of the largest social housing providers in the city, we actually in North America, it's our responsibility to confront anti-Black racism from that particular lens. And so in doing that and attempting to do that and attempting to create this strategy, we are currently in the process of consulting with residents. And this is the first time that TCHC is attempting to ask residents how has being Black shaped their experience. And it's really important that the strategy be able to respond to that question. It's really important for us at TCHC to move towards an approach that is not colorblind, right? Understanding that like the policies and procedures that currently exist at TCHC often impact Black residents in a way that is different than impacts other residents. And we're taking a confronting anti-Black racism lens to those policies, procedures, and so on, so that we can confront that and we can strategize around that. But we won't be able to do that without resident participation. So as we are currently doing consultations with residents and different resident groups. I'm really here to invite folks to really be engaged in that process, be engaged with my team, myself and my team, around, what are your experiences and what solutions can you share with us around how to confront anti-Black racism and how to do this work in a way that is impactful to you all. And so I'm hoping that folks can reach out to our team and join some consultations or join some conversations. We've already been in touch with Gail, who has my contact. So if you don't have my contact and want to get in contact with our team, you can do so. Sorry, Gail, I'm volunteering you to do this.
Okay, all good.
Yes, but please do, because this work is not going to be meaningful and impactful without the voices and solutions that are coming from residents. And so my team is committed to doing that. And with that, I will stop talking. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Evelyn and Barry. Thanks very much. Okay, now I'm going to introduce Amina Dibe, who is the Policy and Programs Analyst with RESCON, the Residential Construction Council of Ontario. Welcome, Amina.
Thank you, Fatima, and thank you, Daniels and the Regent Park Neighbourhood Association for inviting us here today and allowing us to share what we've been doing on anti-racism, diversity, and inclusion. And I echo what Mitchell said at the beginning. It's unfortunate that it took incidents in the summer for us to be here today, but I think part of at least RESCON's initiatives going forward is how can we be more proactive as opposed to reactive? And in terms of our response to the hate crimes at the Daniels site and other construction sites across Toronto, like most and many other organizations on the call, we unequivocally and immediately condemned the incidents. The second thing that we did is we established a Construction Against Racism Everywhere campaign, which includes visuals and hard hat stickers for construction workers to wear around construction sites. And that really is to foster a sense of solidarity and allyship. The third thing that we did is hold the Addressing Racism in Construction webinar, which was in September, and that brought together industry and labor for a meaningful dialogue on the issue of racism, including and specifically anti-Black racism in construction. We've also participated in discussions with Mayor Tory and the Confronting Anti-Black Racism unit within the City of Toronto. And we've engaged with the province with the Black Youth Action Plan to understand how residential construction can remove barriers for Black youth to enter into the trades. And the biggest and more long-term initiative is the Anti-Racism Roundtable that we have established, which is an ongoing coalition that brings together developers, sub-trades, unions, not-for-profit, employment agencies, colleges, school boards, and government to come together and actually put pen to paper on a strategy and implement initiatives relating to anti-racism and anti-Black racism in the industry. And our three core focuses really are training and education, workplace policies, and marketing and communications, because we really think that there is a big education and awareness issue. And again, this is not certainly not a short-term endeavor. This is very much long-term. And really, in the construction, working in construction, health and safety is a key focus, and racism in the construction industry is a health and safety issue. So we're looking at it from multiple lenses, and we're very eager to continue the dialogue and continue to establish relationships with different community organizations. So thank you for having us here today.
Thanks very much, Amina. Now I'd like to welcome Chris Campbell from the Carpenters Local 27. Chris is the Equity and Diversity Representative for Carpenters District Council of Ontario. Chris.
Hi everyone, Chris here. I'm here with my colleague, Mike York and Sean Blaine. Look, thanks Fatima for reaching out to us. This is very important for us and the community and everyone. Daniels, thank Mitchell Cohen, also the Regent Park Neighborhood Association. Kristyn Wong-Tam, she had to go, but thank you for, spreading the word. RESCON, thank you, Amina, for, enlightening us as to what's happening so far. On the issue, anti-Black racism is not anything new, right? It's been out there for many years, and Black youths back then, 30 years ago when I started, yes, I was exposed to it, but it was different then. We're in a different era today where people speak out, right? Especially because of the George Floyd murder that occurred on TV in May of 2025. Look, I'm very proud of my union. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that the Carpenters Union or the Carpenters District Council is perfect. That's way far from it. But one of my experience with my colleague that's on the line right now, where we, after the George Floyd murder, we went to the office, right? It's two Black men and said, look, we feel hurt by this. We want to let our voices be heard. And we ask our leaders or president or executive secretary, treasurer Tony Anotsi, we ask him for the union flag. And he goes, Chris, Sean, go down there, go march in the parade, go and represent your family, represent your culture, represent the union in a Black Lives Matter a march, a peaceful Black Lives Matter march. So that's indicative of the leadership that we have at the Carpenters District Council. Now, the question I got today was, what have we done since the whole noose incident on site, since the whole graffiti that's been found in the washroom, etc., and the sadness, what have the unions done? So one of the first things that we did, right, we came up with a charter of inclusive workplace and community poster. This poster, where it tells where we stand, was approved by our executive and then approved by our members. This is posted on our website. It's posted in various job sites, construction sites in Toronto, where it openly tells the world where the Carpenters District Council stand. And that's one of the things I'm so proud of, right? Another things that we did was we reached out to various construction associations, including RESCON, the Toronto Construction Association, the Ontario Construction Association, the Formwork Association, the Trimwork Association, as many of them as we can, and ask them to stand with us, openly denounce anti-Black racism or racism of any type. We all openly wanted them to stand with us, and that's what's happening tonight. Also, different construction companies, they openly express, let us know where they stand. They stand in solidarity with us on this. Now, another thing we did was we didn't want to be in a silo by ourselves. So what we did, we on different sites, each different Daniel sites, from Regent Park to Square One to North York to Scarborough, we were there with the different construction union, whether it be LIUNA, whether it be IBW, the carpenters, the drywallers, you name it. We stood with a unified voice at the Daniels pre-job meeting, speaking, letting them know where we stand as union leadership. And I'm telling you, at those meetings, right, the workers applaud and show us, show everyone, show the media that is not indicative of who they are as hardworking Torontonians. That it was only, or it gives the impression that's only one or two bad apples in our sector that that's involved in such horrific act of hate. Now, one of the other things that we're doing is we're planning to have training and information sessions on understanding racism, understanding implicit bias, understanding the actions when taken of racism, how it hurts, you know, individuals, the workers, the other workers around them. So we're hoping to get that done or get that moving in the future. Another action that we've taken since then is we have suspended a member who admitted to installing one of the noose on one of our major projects. He was brought in to the union and he was given the option to be kicked out of the union, or he was brought into the office the following day and was given the option of being suspended or kicked out of the union. But instead, he left the union, and so that member is no longer with us. There are other members who have written, you know, disgusting things on social media, and those members have also been suspended from the union. Right, so we're not just holding up a charter of inclusive workplace and community poster. No, we've actually followed it up with concrete action, and I think Mike York would like to expand on that a little bit after. Right, another thing that we've been doing is we are reaching out even more to more local community organizations, right? We're not just going to the community and says, we're the Carpenters Union, but we're reaching out. Maybe the BBP, maybe the CBTU, maybe the Regent Park Neighbourhood Association. We're a representative are meeting with the leaders down there and you know, let them know that the organizations like the Carpenters Union, we're here and we're community partners and we're here to make things better. Mike, I would like you to explain a little bit on the suspension and termination of one of our members. Are you there, Mike?
I'm here.
Yes. So Mike, walk us through what happened with that member that admitted to having a noose or placing a noose on one of our sites.
Just I wanted to make sure that people can hear me. It's not like this. It's not like the CBC where you're on mute, right? So I'm okay. Yeah. So Chris has raised that issue and described the background to that. And it's also important for folks to realize that was right in the middle of the crisis in the whole industry, and it was happening on a number of projects from the East End at Michael Garron Hospital to Regent Park to right downtown and then up on the LRT. And we said, this is, and from our perspective, we'd had enough as an organization. Not that all those other occasions were our members, but we had one occasion on the LRT at the Fairbank station. This individual had admitted to it and the employer had dismissed him. And our communication to the employer was, you had done the right thing. Secondly to that, the major employer, which is Crosslinks Transit Solutions, they said, we don't want this individual back on our job sites ever and at all. And we communicated that was also the right decision. And as Chris has indicated, within 24 hours, that individual admitted to doing, making a noose on a job site, had come into the office, and we said, our discussion with this individual was, you have done something so outrageous, we no longer want you or need you as a member of the Carpenters Union. And that with by probably the end of business on the second day, that individual was no longer a member of the Carpenters Union. We felt that was a strong action to take, but I can tell you from the feedback that we're getting from our other members, as Chris has alluded to, many members, they're asking us, where is our leadership on this issue? It was a strong choice. It was a tough choice, and but it was also a choice that needed to be done to send a signal to the industry, to our other members, of supporting our other members, but also sending a message that we couldn't tolerate that any longer. So, you know, as Mitchell had mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, from an employer's perspective, they wanted to take the strongest position possible. And as Chris has mentioned, we had worked with Daniels on a number of occasions. So it was kind of I guess, a scenario where the Carpenters had to step up to the plate, make a strong decision. And we made sure that within hours, that individual was no longer a member of the Carpenters Union.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And Kristyn Wong-Tam explained how much of a good industry partner Daniel is. And I was once introduced to Michael Cohen, and I just want to reiterate or mention again that our relationship with Daniel was way before this, began way before this. I remember Mike explaining to me that we have been partnering with Daniels to provide a career for young people from Regent Park. You know, Daniels is redeveloping Regent Park, but for many years we've been involved with the craft program, the choice program, where we recruit young people from Regent Park to work on those towers that you see and those houses that you see down there. So they're demolishing the old Regent and they're rebuilding it, but they're also giving young people not employment, but a career. They have the choice to come in, or we recruit them. So for instance, early this year, we recruited about 12 people and we provide training for them. And if they choose to join the carpenters after the training, or the drywallers, or whichever other trades, right, they have the option to do that. So this is just one of the things that Daniel has been doing for many years. So when this happened on one of the sites, we were you know, eager to go out and you know, stand in solidarity and let the community, let the workers know that we condemn anti-Black racism, discrimination of any type, right? We totally is against those acts of craziness. I see my colleague is getting ready there to come online, so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm going to welcome Jason Ottey, who's the Director of Government Relations and Communications for LIUNA Local 183. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Fatima. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me today. First, I want to start off by thanking the Regent Park Neighbourhood Association and Daniels for hosting this event this evening. These conversations are so incredibly important, and they send a strong message that our industry will not tolerate hate, will stand against bigotry, and we will fight to end racism. Acts of hate and intolerance have no place on our job sites, in our industries, or in our communities. That is why LIUNA and Local 183 reaffirmed our zero tolerance policy towards any and all forms of racism, hate, and bigotry, and that any member who participates in such acts of hate and ignorance will face severe consequences and sanction, which will include the risk of expulsion from our union. LIUNA Local 183 was founded on diversity. Our history here in this city started by providing a voice and shining a light for those who were neither seen nor heard, who, when they tried to join traditional craft unions in the late 1950s, faced outright discrimination and bigotry as new immigrants to Canada. From the rejection of a few, we became the voice of the many. Our diversity became our strength, and it is the fabric that binds us together today. But the recent acts of hate and intolerance also showed us that we must not take that strength for granted. And it's why we've taken a hard look within the programs that we offer and the services that we provide that we are inclusive to all, and especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color. It's why we're in the process of introducing mandatory diversity and inclusion training, not only for our apprentices and members who are upgrading their skills, but also to our staff employees and senior leadership teams across the province. It's why our legal teams will litigate rather than negotiate cases involving discrimination and hatred. These are just a few steps that we've taken, and there are many more that we'll have to take. And we'll have mistakes, and we'll make some missteps, but it's a great reassurance that we're not taking these steps alone, but we're taking it together. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Jason. Really appreciate it. Now we're going to move in to more the report back period regarding the incident itself. And just before we get into that, we have one more speaker. So we're joined by Superintendent Moreira with 51 Division. And Superintendent Moreira, I'm wondering, we're running a little bit behind schedule. So if I could ask you to keep to the 3 minutes, that would be great. Thank you.
I absolutely will. First, I just want to acknowledge what great partners Daniels has been throughout this investigation. Our investigation continues. It is far from completed. In fact, there's been a number of incidents that have happened right across the city. The chief has dedicated a number of investigators coordinated out of our hate crimes unit, a centralized unit, and including members of our intelligence services. We are not just looking at the incident that happened in Regent Park, but looking for patterns with the other incidents that have happened across the city. Regrettably, there's been quite a few, some that have made the news, others that haven't, but we've had almost 20 incidences since the beginning of the year that can in some way be attributed to construction sites and have elements of hate. Obviously, these manifest itself in different types of criminal offenses. But if all of our partners were like Daniels, we would probably be a little further ahead in some of these other investigations. Having said that, we continue to pursue a number of different leads, and like a number of crimes that occur, we're just waiting for that one piece of information that'll set the other pieces more clearly in place and allow us to make an arrest.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Moreira. Okay, so now as we move on to the next major section really of this presentation, and that's the report back to the hate crime at the DuEast construction site, and to give a bit more detail as well about the work that we're doing internally as an organization and in collaboration with the industry. So I'm going to welcome a few of our Daniels colleagues, starting with Sam Tassone, who is the construction partner at the Daniels Corporation, who will take us through some of the work that we're doing to address the incident itself. Sam.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to contribute to this very important issue and dialogue. Can everybody hear me okay? Fatima, give me a head shake if good. Thank you. In the hours following the discovery of the hate paraphernalia at our site, Mitchell Cohen, Daniels president and CEO, released a public statement. In this statement, Mitchell was unequivocal in naming this incident as a hate crime, an act of racism perpetrated directly against the Black community. He also affirmed that there is zero tolerance for racism, prejudice, and hate on Daniels construction sites and within our organization as a whole. All of us at Daniels feel the same way. In following up the immediate response to this hate crime, Daniels organized a series of all workers meetings on each of our construction sites across the GTA, starting with the DuEast site. That took place on the Monday following this incident. These meetings included senior members of the Daniels team, construction site management team members, representatives from the construction unions and associations, as well as all of the workers on the site. Nobody was allowed to go to their work areas without first participating in this event with all of us. Steve Langdon, our VP, of Construction Operations addressed the assembled workers, as did each of the representatives of our key union partners. As I had said, the first of these meetings was held on Monday, June the 29th, before any work commenced on the DuEast site. Following the meeting, additional workers' meetings took place at each of all of our other construction sites across the GTA, including Toronto, Mississauga, and Scarborough. In total, more than 900 workers attended these meetings and participated in the speeches by the various leaders that were present. The content of these talks reiterated Daniels' disgust at the hate crime that took place, reinforced that there is zero tolerance on our construction sites, zero tolerance on our construction sites for racism and hate and within our organization, and repeated our commitment to stand against racism and prejudice. Anyone with information about the hate crime was encouraged to come forward. Union leaders, as well as the representatives of the residential construction industry associations, were present with us and spoke to their organization's position and commitment with regards to the stand against racism. It is important for me to acknowledge the key union partners who attended these all workers meetings with us, in no specific order: the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the Drywall and Acoustic Insulation Union Local 675, the Central Ontario Building Trades, the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, the International Union of Elevator Constructors Local 50, the Sheet Metal Workers Association Local 285, the Carpenters Local 27, LIUNA Local 183, Local 46, and last but not least, the Building Union of Canada. All of these key union partners were clear and unequivocal that hate crimes, racism, and prejudice have no place in our industry, and that any worker found committing such acts would be removed from the union and from our industry. We fully support that. Immediately upon discovery of the hate paraphernalia at the DuEast construction site, Daniels filed a report with the Toronto Police Service and has cooperated fully with their investigation, including providing direct access to the construction site, video surveillance footage, attendance sheets, contact information for all trades and contractors on the site. This investigation, as you've heard, is ongoing. Daniels also launched our own internal investigation. This investigation was conducted as part of our Daniels Workplace Violence Prevention Policy and Program. The internal investigation included a review of Daniels' policies, video surveillance from the site, interviews with site supervision, as well as workers from a number of different trades, unions, disciplines, and security review logs. The internal investigation concluded that a noose was tied from an old rope that had been hanging from the roof of the construction site, and that this noose was likely directed at one or more of our Black co-workers as a form of harassment or threat of workplace violence. Unfortunately, the investigator was unable to determine who committed this heinous act and indicated that it was an open question as to who tied the noose, whether internal or external to the project. Should additional information come to light, Daniels is prepared to reopen this investigation with our investigator. While our investigation has ended, Daniels has initiated discussions with Toronto Crime Stoppers to provide anyone with information about the DuEast the opportunity to report such information anonymously. Daniels plans to work with Crime Stoppers over the coming months to create additional site signage and highlight the investigation on the Crime Stoppers website and social media. Now, it is important to note that Crime Stoppers has developed a new approach to their work and no longer provides financial rewards in return for information. Daniels has not ruled out the possibility of offering a financial reward for this information that leads to the identification and the successful prosecution of the individual or individuals who perpetrated this hate crime. We think it's important to provide individuals with an opportunity to provide tips anonymously, and will pursue additional steps like offering a financial reward when appropriate. Just as a note, the actual investigation, recognizing that this Systemic racism has created significant mistrust in racialized communities of this type. Daniels hired an independent law firm, Sherwood Coos, and specifically requested that a person of color lead the investigation. This law firm specializes in employment and labor law, and the lead investigator, Priya Sarin, also specializes in employment and human rights related issues. Lastly, I just wanted to comment that I represented Daniels at a meeting between senior executives of the construction industry and Mayor Tory's office to discuss incidents as well as policies and approaches that could be implemented to tackle anti-Black racism in the industry. Daniels is committed to collaborating with all stakeholders within and beyond our industry to address systemic racism. I'd like to recognize the efforts of RESCON in addressing and tackling this very important issue, as well as our partnership with BUILD. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sam. Now I'm going to introduce Jeanette Batika, who is our Vice President of People and Culture, who will talk about some of the work we're doing internally and in collaboration with the industry. Jeanette.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, and thank you to RPNA and everyone for their care and diligence around this issue. So I'm here to talk about our corporate and industry initiatives in response to the recent events. Our goal is to ensure significant and lasting change and not just check a box. So the things we're working on is an anti-discrimination policy. So we've always had a violence and harassment policy, which Sam did refer to. So discrimination has always fallen under that. But after hosting an internal and open diversity, equity, and inclusion forum in the summer, our team members let us know that it wasn't clear that that was the case. So in order to bring greater clarity and also to reinforce a zero tolerance stance, we wanted to move forward with an anti-discrimination policy. The policy will be discussed and finalized next week in our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and then it will be implemented firm-wide. And it's also important to note that that committee has also been created due to these recent instances and circumstances. So another initiative that we're working on is an employee survey and data collection. So earlier this fall, so probably about a month ago, we launched a belonging and inclusion survey to help us shape our diversity and inclusion program moving forward. We wanted to make sure that we were listening to our employees and their input. So what we did is we included a demographic survey in there as well. So when we're looking at the data, it will give us a good baseline of our diversity, but it will also allow us to attach feedback to people's diversity to see where we need to work a bit harder. And in terms of tracking diversity, so historically, our HR system only tracked gender and age, and we can't really move the needle if we're just tracking gender and age, because as we all know, what gets measured gets done. So we're going to be changing our HR system and adding new fields in there so that we could track things like race and ethnic origin. So we can monitor our programs that we're putting in place to make sure that they're actually effective. And if not, then we reevaluate and put other things in place. Other things we're working on are hiring policies. So in the past, we've prioritized outreach in the Regent Park community to focus on local applicants, which has been a really good source of diverse candidates for us. And that was a bit of a geographic approach. However, over the last several months, we've increased our focus on diverse candidates, and we're using specific job boards to reach out to Black and Indigenous candidates. So when we're working with agencies as well, we are letting them know specifically that we're looking for diverse candidates, and we make a specific request for Black and Indigenous candidates. And we've had to go back to agencies sometimes to clarify or ask for more. And that's been working quite well for us since we started that. In addition, in some of our most recent postings, we've used LinkedIn as a tool to reach out to Black candidates. Indigenous candidates has been a little bit trickier for us, but we're still working on that. Another initiative we're working on is training. So it's diversity, equity, and inclusion training. And in the fall of this year, we've also launched mandatory web-based training. So the training, it was two parts. So it was diversity and inclusion, and it was also unconscious bias. So it was almost like an unconscious bias 101. And it's really meant as basic training so that everyone at Daniels is using the same language, and we have a baseline of knowledge, really. And from that, moving forward, we're going to do additional training. So this is only the beginning for us. It's step one of, I'm not sure how many, but it's step one of maybe 50 or so in terms of training. So I also want you to know that this week, our executive team will also be participating in an interactive workshop on biases. And that's being run by Matrix 360. And then also from that workshop, there's going to be a bit of an assessment, and the facilitator, Chandran from Matrix 360, will give us feedback on what we need to do moving forward. So types of trainings and things like that, and also feedback on our policies and practices. And then in 2021, we're working right now on anti-racist training. And I want to address something. We haven't done anti-racist training right away because we want to create a baseline so that people have some base knowledge. And then anti-racist training, we were very specific about what we wanted. Didn't want to just check a box, as I've said before. We want to make a difference. So that's why we've put it into next year, 2021. So now I'm going to talk about the industry initiatives. So we've worked with a few leaders in the industry, and we have also signed 3 pledges, in fact. So I'll talk about the first 2 pledges, and then I'll leave the last pledge to the end because it's with Build, who we're also working with. So we've signed the Black North Initiative pledge. For those of you who don't know, the Black North Initiative has been led by the Canadian Council of Business Leaders Against Anti-Black Racism. And what they're doing is they're bringing together hundreds of Canadian businesses to hold industry leaders accountable to take action and really reshape corporate policies and practices that are upholding anti-Black racism. So the signatories, and Daniels is one of them, we've all committed to specific educational requirements in addition to hiring practices, certain hiring practices, and making sure we have diverse executive team requirements. So they have specific requirements there. And there's also a report back function for the Black North Initiative. We've also signed the ILIO charter with United Way. So it's a pledge and a charter. And what that is it's bringing together different organizations and different sectors as well to find innovative ways to create economic equality really at the neighborhood level. And again, there are specific commitments to things like living wage, for those of you who have heard of living wage, social procurement, and inclusive hiring practices. And again, there's a report back function that we've agreed to there. And then moving on to the organizations we're working with. So we are working with RESCON, and as you just heard, they've hosted a webinar in September that we were a part of, and they've created this roundtable, which is made up of industry stakeholders. So they're going to be meeting quarterly, and Daniels will also be part of that as well. We're also we're also participating in RESCON's Construction Against Racism Everywhere, the CARE campaign that was also referred to. So we're participating in those things with RESCON. We've also partnered with TCBN. In July of this year, we were represented on a webinar organized by TCBN that featured a discussion about the Black experience in construction. And we've engaged with them in a broader discussion on how we can work with them to address systemic racism in the workplace. And last but not least is Build. So Daniels is leading the discussion with Build around diversity, equity, and inclusion. A key outcome in those discussions really has been the creation of a zero tolerance policy, a zero tolerance pledge for its members, and in addition to a survey that's to go out to the members, and the surveys to get a good understanding of people's policies, practices, knowledge, and ability to move the needle forward as well. We're also creating a playbook for their members. So the playbook will be almost like a guide for people who don't have people and culture teams. So what they could do to move the needle in their organization. and to make a change. And they're also going to be focusing on education. So to create and to do all these things, Build has created a People and Culture Committee, which I am co-chairing. And that's really just to move things forward. So there's a specific committee that's addressing all those things on a continual basis. And as I close off, I would really like to say that these initiatives are important to us at Daniels as people, as individual people, but it's also important to us as an organization. I know there is some fear around organizations losing steam or focus and the momentum around this kind of decreasing. But I want to assure you that this is part of us, and we're building this into our Daniels DNA so that we don't lose sight of the real issues here. Thanks, Fatima.
Thanks very much, Jeanette. Now I'm going to invite Gokul, who is our VP Construction, to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing on site.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me to present on this very important issue. Today, I want to talk to you about our various initiatives related to hiring of trades and working on site, which are related to diversity and inclusion. As you know, we've had a robust and comprehensive health and safety policy over many, many years that covers all the activities on our construction sites. In our health and safety policy, there is a very strict zero tolerance policy towards any hate, discriminatory or racist behaviors on site. This is communicated in writing to all our contractors and suppliers on site prior to any work being done by them on site. In addition to this, we now have included a diversity and inclusion policy to our health and safety policy. We are also actively encouraging all our trades, contractors, consultants, and suppliers to develop their own diversity and inclusion policies. I want to talk to you briefly about our pre-qualification program at Regent Park. As some of you probably know, we have a requirement to pre-qualify contractors who want to work on our Regent Park projects. Our intention going forward is to have, as a prerequisite, contractors to have their own diversity and inclusion policies in order for them to pre-qualify to work for us to build our communities. One of the other programs that we've had a lot of success at Regent Park is the Local Labor Initiative, and I want to spend a few minutes talking to you about that. We have always believed in building strong and viable communities, and as part of this endeavor, we have implemented a local labor initiative on our Regent Park projects. Through this initiative, we have required our trades and our consultants to hire from within the Regent Park community to help design and construct our buildings. Since the beginning of the revitalization, we have created 195 positions within our organization and our trades and consultants. This has been a hugely successful program, and we've had many successful stories of individuals that we've hired from Regent Park, and we've had a lot of collaboration between our trades and our suppliers and our consultants, and this has been a great program that has yielded tremendous results. As Chris from Local 27 mentioned, we've also partnered with Local 27 to create the CRAFT program that we've implemented in our Regent Park community. This is a program that encourages youth to join the construction industry. This program involves 4 weeks of paid training for the youth, and also a 10-week job placement program with a trade on one of our Daniels construction sites. Thus far, since 2016, when this program was first implemented, we've actually had 36 people in the program, and we have generated over $170,000 in economic activity around this program. Lastly, I wanted to bring to your attention the site signage that we've now come up with. That actually, Fatima, can you bring up the site signage, please? Next slide. Thank you. So this is the site signage that we have posted on all of our construction job sites to clearly send a message of the rules of engagement around diversity and inclusion on our job sites. It it's intended to clearly demonstrate to all the workers and anyone who steps onto our sites what the rules of engagement are, and the fact that we have a zero tolerance policy towards any activities around hate, racism, or any kind of discriminatory behavior on our job sites. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gokul. Appreciate it. Now we're going to move on to Hila, our VP Social Impact, who I know many of you in the community know as well, and she'll be talking about some of the immediate initiatives that we're going to be working on and sort of the immediate next steps that we're looking at.
Perfect. Thanks, Fatima. Great to be here tonight, and thank you everyone for taking your Tuesday evening to join us. I want to make sure that we do leave time for questions because we are running a bit behind. So forgive me if I zoom through my section, but as you know, Fatima and I are always available to talk through any of what we've shared today and anything I go through in greater detail. I hope what's come across today is that, you know, we do have work underway, but it's absolutely not done, and it's not going to be done for a long time until we see real systemic change. And we hear from you as the community that you're seeing that real systemic change. We are taking a sort of anti-racism, diversity and inclusion lens through all of our work. That includes our social impact and community engagement work, from our corporate giving strategies to our social procurement strategies, whether that's of artwork and welcome gifts, through to how we engage with our subcontractors and trades around local hiring. So we are taking what we see as sort of our anti-Black racism work, our diversity and inclusion work, and applying that to all parts of our work. For example, as Gokul mentioned, we are making sure that any contractor we work with in the future not only accepts our policy, but has their own policy. You'll see in the report that we included a call for artists for artworks, for artwork that will be in the Due East lobby. And full credit to RPNA and the Regent Park community here for letting us know when we misstep and get things wrong. So that call for artists was for a collective or individual artist from a racialized background, Black, Indigenous, or a person of color. And it was highlighted to us that while we take an inclusion sort of approach to this, the hate crime at Due East was really directed at the Black community. So making sure that we prioritize in the selection of the artwork a Black artist or arts collective. And we'll make sure that we have community representation and RPNA representation on the selection panel for that artwork. And that artwork, along with the plaque that accompanies it, communicates the importance of the Black experience, which is not one experience, but experience of Black individuals and their sort of role in our communities through the artwork and through the signage that accompanies it. Sam touched on Toronto Crime Stoppers. We heard from Superintendent Moreira that the investigation is ongoing, and there is more information needed to actually progress the investigation. And what we're hoping to achieve through Crime Stoppers is that there will be an anonymous tip that will come forward. So right now, whether it was our internal investigation or a police investigation, a person would have to identify themselves to come forward with information. The opportunity with Crime Stoppers allows them to do that anonymously. We will follow through that approach over the next few months. And as Sam mentioned, if that doesn't sort of surface any new information, we have not ruled out offering a reward to help incentivize individuals to come forward with any information. And then lastly, we hope that this is the first of many sort of town halls and dialogues of this sort, not to deal with other incidents, but to communicate collaboratively with the community that this work is ongoing. I'm going to go back to Jeanette's statement of this is not a check in the box of, you know, we've now reported back to the Regent Park community and we're done. We are committed to continuing this dialogue, to working with each and every one of you to do this really important work and to get this work right. And that's not going to happen every time, but we want to hear from you when it doesn't happen or where we've overlooked something or overstepped. So I look forward to continuing those discussions and would encourage folks, you know, as we wrap up this portion, to share any questions on the Q&A function.
Thanks, Hila. Thanks very much. Yep, I second that. So if folks in the audience listening, please do submit questions. If you have them, you can submit them through the Q&A function. Those of you on the phone, you know, raise your hand as well, and we'll make sure to get those questions answered. And that's really what we're going to be getting into in a few minutes. First, we did have a couple of questions that RPNA wanted to ask specifically. Because we're a little bit behind on time, we've decided to just hit a couple of them and then we can come back to those others that we were skipping, you know, should we have additional time. So I'm going to hit this first question, or first, actually, I'm going to introduce Marlene and Lloyd from the RPNA leadership. I'm not sure if Lloyd is actually with us at the moment, but in any case, Marlene is, and she'll take us through a couple of these questions. Marlene.
Marlene, you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. Yeah, systematically, Black people are not in a position of power. In America, they are now celebrating a Black woman to be vice president-elect. In Canada, we have Jean Augustine. Daniels currently has no Black people on its senior management team. Is there a plan to do so? And if so, what is it? That's for Daniels.
Thanks, Marlene. I'm going to ask Jeanette from our team to take that question.
Hi, Marlene. Thanks so much. That is a great question. So Daniels is a relatively young organization, and our senior leadership and executive teams are generally made up of team members who've been with the organization for a significant period of time. I think that the average tenure between the group of them is probably about 20 or 25 years. So the reality is that the diversity of our team hasn't necessarily been prioritized over the course of our history as an organization. And although we have increasing numbers of people of color on our senior management team, so directors, senior managers, and the like, it still isn't as diverse as it could be, and we acknowledge that. We do, again, as I said, have Black colleagues in director and senior manager roles, and we are looking to make sure that they have a lot of opportunity to become part of that senior management or leadership team. And we're working on that as an organization. I'd also like to add that we've doubled our efforts to find areas to locate diverse candidates, so more specifically Black and Indigenous candidates. And we're implementing, or we have implemented over the last several months, a new hiring practice that requires the last 3 candidates so that 2 of the, let me get this straight. So for out of 3 final candidates, that at least 2 of the 3 final candidates are diverse individuals. And that's an absolute requirement. We've been working on that and we've pushed hard on that, and it's working out quite well for us. So as we look towards the future, there will definitely be more opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeanette. So Marlene, I'm going to scroll down. I know this question was answered in quite a bit of depth by some of the union representatives. We can come back to it after,
Okay.
but there was this question that we're going to ask. Go ahead.
Yes. Are Daniels and the unions committed to work with this community collaboratively to help address anti-Black racism through the changing policy and practice in your organization and sector on an ongoing basis?
Thanks, Marlene. I'm going to throw that one to Hila to start with, and then the unions can join in as well.
Absolutely. So from the Daniels perspective, the answer is yes. I mean, I look forward to the conversations with RPNA and community members to figure out how. I think that the yes is easy to say. I think the how will be important of how we do that meaningfully. Is it workshops? Is it focus groups? Sort of what does that interaction look like? And how do we bring our union partners and the industry associations to the table? So I think it's a really great start that we have RESCON and Local 27 and Local 183 here with us, but how do we continue that? So, you know, that folks aren't showing up for town halls and then there's nothing in between. I'm gonna put Local 27 on the spot. I mean, we heard from Chris Campbell saying that Local 27 is already engaging at the community levels, doing their outreach. So maybe Chris can speak to what that would look like in terms of how his union and some of the others might interact with RPNA, and how we as Daniels, we are ready to support that interaction and do our part.
So this is one of the things that we've been reaching out to our local community. We've been recruiting through the Toronto Community Benefits Network, right? It's an organization that was formed to recruit members from the local community. They reach out to Black youths, Indigenous youths, etc., and bring them in, provide training or direct them to where they can get basic training, you know, or social assistance, and bring them in, then direct them to the Carpenters Union and the whole other bunch of union, whether it be LIUNA, whether it be IBEW, iron workers, etc. So that's one of the things we've been doing, and we've been having a lot of success. Even up until today, we had about 17 folks from the community who recruited, and they're now looking to do courses starting on Monday, and we're hoping by doing this on an ongoing basis every week, week in, week out, and assist, we're able to get more workers of color, more Black youths integrated in the trades in our organization. Maybe Jason can also speak on LIUNA 183. But yeah, that's just one of the avenues that we have. And like the representative from Daniel also said, we're doing the craft program. We have the OYAP program where the students will come from high school, right? And as needs be, you know, as the sector require people, we do other specific training. For instance, maybe trim, maybe scaffolding, maybe formwork. Yes, we're working with our apprenticeship department to make sure that we level the playing field or open the doors to young people that are looking for a career. And yeah, whatever we can do to make it happen, we're looking at things differently now going forward. Yeah.
I think if I would add one or two comments to that. Look, in response directly to the question, absolutely. I mean, and I also believe that the track record is there. Our partnership with TCHC in numerous iterations of youth programs, whether it's choice or whether it's crafts directly with Daniels, we're there. And I know that other unions as well, and Jason will have a comment. But I also think it's important to engage upper levels of city government and provincial and federal. I mean, we are spending billions of dollars on infrastructure, whether it's in housing in Regent Park or across our city. We have the opportunity to create those pathways to a better career for young people across our city. And I think what we've done in partnership with Daniels at the craft program is show a benchmark and a model that can be emulated and expanded upon for youth across our city. So we're there, the Carpenters are saying that we want to be part of that partnership, but we also believe that we can ramp this up to engage many more youth. And you know what, I think we just, you know, maybe those of us that are on this call maybe we can think about ways that we kind of put pressure on senior levels of government to really engage youth opportunities through infrastructure investment.
I know, just to add.
Go ahead, Jason.
Sorry, just to add to very quickly adding to Chris and Mike's point, from 183's perspective, we have hired at our training center an outreach coordinator to facilitate getting into communities and explaining careers in construction. And we've been doing that for a long time. And we are seeing some really good feedback. We've partnered with TPS and Jane Finch to have our training center there, talking about careers in construction, in particular, careers that are offered through Local 183 at our various residential and civil job sites. But I think as an organization, we can do more. I think we have to look, and Gila mentioned this idea of focus groups. We have to look and understand, why is there a reluctance sometimes to explore entering the trades? Why is it that a Black youth feel that the trades aren't welcoming to them? And are we doing everything that we can to make sure that that's not the case? And so, there are a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can do, and we have a lot of talk on an abstract level, at a very high level, about how we can approach these things and why we need to do these things. But it's the nitty-gritty detail that makes the difference, right? And that's where I wish more people spend their time. A small thing that we can do is, for example, we have health and safety reps on job sites. They are our eyes and ears onto infractions on job sites and are there to protect the members' interests. We have apprentices coming on site, and as an apprentice, the model is meant to really encourage this transfer of knowledge from a journeyman to a laborer, from a journeyman to an apprentice. But the day-to-day culture of a job site can be intimidating to somebody who's new and doesn't see a lot of people that look like him. So, one idea that is percolating through our organization that we're going to operationalize is training those health and safety people to be mentors, to be really welcoming ambassadors to new people entering the job sites, to tell them the little things about, look, this is where we eat lunch. This is where we hang our boots. This is where we hang our tools, so that they come there and see that this is a welcoming organization. I think we have to create that culture of inclusivity, not just in our hiring, but in our practices on the day-to-day work site. To the government's piece, definitely all organizations need to lobby the government to do more to encourage inclusivity and having more of a diverse job site. But Monty recently made an announcement, and it was significant. I think it was lost by a lot of people. Bill 168, which is the anti-workplace and harassment policy, includes racism. Amina mentioned that racism is considered a health and safety risk. Well, Monty basically said it is, and now employers are to have policies in place on how they resolve those issues, how they're going to address those issues. And so that again creates a culture where people feel empowered to speak up and don't have to worry about the fear of reprisal or recrimination for doing so. So the more we do those things, the more we can encourage that culture. I think the more we'll see more people enter the trades from diverse backgrounds.
Thanks, Jason. I just want to recognize there was a question that one of our panelists asked another panelist. So Gail wanted to ask Mitchell to comment on the hiring practices at Daniels as well. So Mitchell, I'll give you the floor for that.
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, sorry. So Gail had just asked you to comment to the hiring policy at Daniels, because she was noting that it's important for this to be implemented with senior leadership sign off. And I think she wanted to hear your comments on that.
Thank you, Gail. Jeanette just went through a fairly detailed overview of what we're doing and the steps we're taking to change the nature of our hiring practices really fundamentally. And so, we're doing that. Jeanette is leading that through our people and culture team. And it's very important for us to learn and to grow. And as I said earlier, this is a moment where we are learning and growing and committed to doing better with our hiring practices, particularly in creating opportunities for people of color and Black people in particular in senior management positions. So we are very much committed to that. Perhaps we should have started that 5 years, 10 years ago. We should have. But we're here today, Gail. And what Jeanette just outlined is an entire comprehensive corporate-wide strategy that has many, many aspects to it, but it culminates also in the desire and the commitment to hire people, Black people, people of color, to senior management positions within our company. And that's the commitment that we will reiterate to you today through me. I hope that answers the question. Fatima, if I could, I'd like to.
Yes.
Thank you, Gail. I appreciate that. I do want to just comment on that last conversation. I think it's really, really important. And Marlene, thank you for the question. In terms of collaboration, and there's a number of different kinds of collaboration that we're all talking about.
Right.
Number one, the collaboration between the unions and the industry association, RESCON, that we're hearing about tonight is so fundamentally important. We've had relationships and lots of communication and collaboration with 183 about hiring and about certain, approaches that we want to take to create capacity within 183. We've done the same, and you've heard a couple times from the team from Local 27 about the initiatives we've taken over many, many years with Local 27 about hiring locally, creating opportunities and pathways. I think what tonight is telling me, and this is really important, is it's now time for us all to come together. Your question incorporated the word collaboration. Well, how important is that? And here's the other part of it. With RPNA, we have this opportunity to also at the same time be on the ground in community, getting feedback in real time in these conversations between not just the two unions and RESCON, but potentially 3 or 4 other unions, that Jason and Mike and Sean can bring to the table. It's time for collaboration in all of this. It's time for us all to think about the future of our industry and how we're going to be a successful industry in the future. And we won't be if we can't bring new workers in. And we won't be if we're not able to bring Black young people and racialized and people of color into the industry young and have them feel totally welcomed. That point about being welcomed, being mentored is such an important part. Just opening the door is one part of it. Then, as Jason said, the practices of how we work with new people in the industry, that's what's really going to change the dial in terms of the evolution of the industry and how people feel working on all of our job sites. So I think the question is really great, and the potential here with what we've been hearing, we've had these conversations independently. We're now at the point where we're going to have these conversations together. And as Hila said, and I think we are all saying, on an ongoing basis. So thank you for that question.
Thanks, Mitchell.
If I could add, Sean Blake.
Absolutely, Sean, go for it.
We know in the industry that our general contractors, and our builders are the lead on the site. So realistically, the tone stems from those leaders to create that environment where there is growth for all culture. So until it is that the generals, and Daniels is right there charting the course, and I applaud them, until it is that they see that any disturbance when it comes to racial intolerance or sexual intolerance, any of that, if it does not get removed from site, that slows down productivity on site. Okay, and it also, as we have said, provides a safety hazard on site. And as that inclusive charter states, everybody has the right to come to work and feel safe working with their peers and not having to look over their shoulders. So we have to continuously foster that environment. And if that takes bringing government in to force policy, to promote change, then we have to push for that as well. But working with the community is something that the Carpenters have always done. Thank you.
Fatima, if I could as well, I just want to make one other point about something Jeanette talked about, which is build. You know, I don't know if we defined build. Build is actually the organization of all of the developers and people working in the industry. You know, throughout across the entire industry, there's, you know, a couple thousand members of build. I think it's really important that we take, I mean, Sean, to your point, that we take this conversation further to the big developers, the big builders, the big contractors, and we really push the limits in terms of raising that bar, raising the awareness, making sure that all of those take leadership. And we know that many of them already are waking up to this as we are all waking up to it. And we need to keep pedal to the metal. We need to keep this as an ongoing thing, not a one-off checkbox like you referred to, Jeanette. So thank you, Sean.
Thanks very much, everyone. Okay, so we're going to move into questions from the community. I see that there are a couple there, and we have a hand up that's been up for a while as well. So I will just remind everybody, please share your questions in the Q&A function. Upvote questions by clicking the like button and press *9 to raise your hand if you're dialing in by phone. All right. So we'll start with this first question here. So out of the 195 positions filled by Regent Park residents, how many are Black?
Fatima, maybe I can take this question.
Sure.
Okay. So Sarah, thanks for your question. We unfortunately have not been tracking this from a racial kind of standpoint, but we can definitely go back and we can pull this information. But what I can tell you from my personal experience, having interacted with many of these Regent Park resident hires, is that we predominantly have like people of color that have filled these 195 positions. But we will get back to you with more specifics in terms of how many of them were from the Black community and how many of them were from other communities of color.
Yeah, and just to jump in there, as we look back on the revitalization over the last 15 years as a community, so Daniels with Toronto Community Housing, with Toronto Employment Social Services, we're recognizing now that we don't have the sort of finer grain level of data that we could have been collecting through this process in terms of, the racial identity and the cultural identity, even the language identity of folks that were being hired. We haven't been tracking sort of the economic development that comes through that, how long they were employed. So we are getting to a point as we have, as Jeanette mentioned, systems that allow us to track this. And frankly, a consciousness now that it's important to measure all of these things, that we will do better at that. From what Gokul said, absolutely, I've been sort of leading our local labor initiative for the last 10 years or so. We know that it is folks from Regent Park, from Black and racialized sort of identities, but we don't have the sort of finer grain data. That is something going forward that we'll be looking at. And as we look at employment through our local labor initiative, Gokul mentioned this, we are also going to take these programs on the road to all of our communities. We've taken a very geographic approach to date to Regent Park, and we remain committed to all of our local hiring practices in Regent Park. We've seen in Regent Park how they can work and how impactful they can be. And we are working with our internal teams and our subcontractors and the unions to figure out how to roll this out across the GTA. Because there is, yes, a community in Regent Park that has individuals from Black identities, from people of color, from Indigenous identities, but those communities exist across the GTA. So making sure that we are being representative and then tracking that as well. So I look forward to being able to report back to you how we're doing on that in the future, both in Regent Park and across the communities we build in.
If I could add, Hila, just
of course,
doubling on your point about duration, right? That to me is a far more important statistic than the number of hires. Gail in the chat has a question about, or a point about measurement is key, and I agree absolutely. What we are measuring though is equally important. And to me, what we have to look at is not just the number of hires, but how long have they stayed? Why did they leave? And if they stayed, would they continue? Through my work as one of the skills trades advisors to the minister, we had an opportunity to speak to apprentices and talk about their pathways, right? Like, how was their journey? And I'll tell you, it was scary. Some of the stories we heard, it was tough and it was divisive and they had to have a lot of grit. But I asked them at the end of it, how many of you would do this again, knowing what you know now? And all of the hands shot up. And so I took that as a sign of, okay, the work is great, but the pathway is not. And so we need to really focus on that. And so when we're looking at measuring our sort of markers for success, I think we really need to focus on the experience in the workplace and how long they've been there, what their experiences have been, and then take a hard look at the people who've left and ask them why. And that's the stuff that will really refine our focus going forward. That to me is the real meat on the bones that can give us good data.
If I could just piggyback on that, to measure success, Daniels right now has demolished and built a new Regent Park, and they're still in the process of doing it. You're now saying that if it is that our youth apprentices are engaged in apprenticeship and follow through and become journey people, does that result in them buying into Daniels' neighborhood? That would tell you that that money, that union dollar, stayed in that neighborhood. That's one other measurement of success.
So I'd like to mention one little anecdote from one of our, Regent Park hires, which was kind of immensely satisfying for us. So this is going back maybe 15 years. Our, shoring contractor hired, somebody from within Regent Park, and he was a fantastic worker, worked really well with our shoring contractor. And I think 4 or 5 years after that, when, on one of my site visits to our job site in Mississauga, when I actually saw that same person working with our shoring contractor over the Mississauga site, I was convinced that our local labor initiative actually worked, because it wasn't just, our contractor hiring, someone for that one project at Regent Park so that a box could be checked. But here was a success story where, this person actually stayed with, the shoring contractor, and we actually saw him on some of our other construction sites.
That's great. That is fantastic.
Local. I mean, something for Hila and Fatima and Jeanette and I to take offline is perhaps we can go back in time and actually, do some surveys with some of that 195 or whatever that number was. I mean, we should have collected that more data, but maybe it's not too late to do what Jason is talking about. Is so, are they still are they still working? Are they in the industry? What was their experience? What can we learn from that experience? I think that could be really important data for us. And would love to work with our team and any of the union teams as well to really try to mine that information, because we can learn a lot from it.
I agree completely.
So one of the things that usually happen in the industry too is yes, we recruit them from simple. So hypothetically, Regent Park is just starting up. Daniels is recruiting. We recruit them, we provide training for them, and yes, they would work possibly on a Daniels site, but if certain stages of the work is finished or it's not ready as yet, it's normal in our industry for that apprentice to be moved to any or to take up employment opportunity at any corner of the city of Toronto, right? Even outside of the city, right? Because the idea is for him to put in enough hours and write his certificate of qualification exam and become a licensed or registered carpenter with the government. So it's not with the unions and including LIUNA and all the other unions. It's normal for them, not just when they register the union, not just to do their whole apprenticeship on that one project. They may be going to a dozen or more project over a year or 2 or 3, whatever it may be, right? And so they may be working, doing some trim, some formwork on Daniels this year, but next year they may be at a nuclear plant doing some scaffolding, right? The sky's the limit as to where they can take it. So don't really look at it as 100 and something people come in. Where are they today? Did they stick it out or whatever it may be? Look at it as, okay, was it something that they really wanted to do, or they're just trying to find their way? And if there wasn't any internal union issues or struggles on the job site, more than likely they will probably stick to it and make a lot of money and become a successful tradesperson. So it's a balance. When you look at questions like that, you have to take it in a balanced approach, or else your results may be a little bit skewed. So it's something to keep in mind. Okay, guys?
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that.
Chris.
Can
I know that we have a couple of questions from folks that are calling in. We have a couple of raised hands. So I'm going to move to that question next, and then we'll go back and forth. So Soraya, I see that you have a raised hand. You've had it for a while. I'm going to allow you to talk.
Thank you, Fatima. I just want to say thank you, all of you guys, especially the Daniels. I love the sincerity, because I attend somewhere else. After when we had a rally, there was a copycat east side, and I attend the town hall meeting, and it was, I don't want to say anything, but it was completely different feeling that I had right now. I just want to say thank you for that. And I love the sign also that will be coming up on the construction site. The question that I have for unions, you mentioned that when the noose was found, this is for union, and you let it go of that person. Why not charge him? And at hate crimes, why you just let it loose? And we see after that there is a lot of copycat that took place throughout the construction site. It caused a lot of mental health. I just want to know, and also in 51 division, if they could alight on this one, why isn't it just hate crimes? Yeah, that's my question.
Thank you, Soraya.
Let me respond from the carpenter's point of view. So when it comes to charging with hate crimes, that is the police prerogative, and we're leaving that side of it with the police. However, when it came to the individual that was a member of ours, we said, this individual has done something, in our opinion, was so outrageous. We said, you are gone from our membership. So if the police charge that individual in the future, that's entirely up to the police. That individual is no longer a member of our union. As a matter of fact, I don't have any idea where that individual is right now. And I believe personally that sends a strong signal to others in the industry, whether they're members of the Carpenters or probably any other union. They're saying that that individual was removed from membership. So I don't know. Look, I mean, I look at it as kind of, the construction industry is a good industry, and I can tell you, it pays well. So the penalty there is taking that individual from a scenario where they're working on an LRT, and that's only in our individual circumstance. That individual probably made $120,000, $130,000 a year with us on the LRT. He was removed from that workplace He's now working out in the, who knows where that individual is. Maybe he's working, maybe, we don't even know if he picked up another job in the middle of COVID. He might be working for $20,000, $30,000 a year. So that infraction had consequences. He put a noose up on a job site, and the consequences are that probably cost him $100,000 a year. And so that's no longer our issue. Our issue is working with our members, and as Chris has said, educating them. And as a matter of fact, I think I wanted to mention that Chris is now our point person for equity around the whole province, and working with community benefits agreements and associations around the province. So I think there was consequences to that individual action on Fairbanks Station on the LRT. And I think it also sent a strong message around how we will deal with that. But I hear your point around charges. We leave that up to the Metro Police.
Because the reasons that I say that what they cause and what they cause the Black communities, and also what kind of message we are sending. We let it go, and he's gonna join another union. It just doesn't add up. If we want to make meaningful change, we need to take action, so we don't have to deal with this again and again. So we will be will be copycat around the city doing the same thing and causing mental health to the Black communities.
I agree. We did. I'm sure we did see copycat events around the city, and we acted in a way that we thought was addressing those that copycat issue. So I mean, look, you can't stop every individual from doing something. We sent what we thought was a strong signal.
If I could just add to that, piggybacking on what Mike is saying, we have to remember that construction, much like every other corporation or industry, is a reflection of society at large. Now, how do you judge the union, or how do you judge the company? Once that person, whether they be a member or an employee of the union or the firm, once they've revealed themselves, how does the union handle that? An expulsion, which is what that was, meaning he's no longer a member of this carpenter union, and he cannot be. That sent that, like Mike had said, sent a signal to, it will cause an effect on your employability and your ability to earn money for your family. So please reconsider is the message that's sent. Reconsider before it is you fly off the handle. I would ask the community what their recommendations are on possible solutions to the next one, once it is that person is identified by the union.
Thanks, Sean. I know that Superintendent Moreira from 51 Division also wanted to comment on this. So Superintendent Moreira, you can have the floor.
Thank you. And Soraya, it's an important point you raise here, and it was definitely a question speaking to some of my colleagues here in the office, our team, about this incident. I'll be quite frank, it's news to me that somebody was identified and had admitted to it. It's certainly not at this didn't happen in the 51 site, and not part of our investigation. We have a whole team that's dedicated and working on these things that are happening across the city. That is my understanding, and I stand to be corrected because I don't have intimate details of all the instances, but I just question whether or not any of this was ever reported to the police. And like every investigation, we rely upon the public and the people who possess this information to pass it along to us, because without information, we're really powerless to send a strong message that this will not be tolerated by our community. And as the gatekeepers to the criminal justice system for these sort of offenses, we take this very, very seriously. We've invested a great deal of time and energy into it. If Mike and Sean and others want to connect with me directly to provide me some of the details, I can definitely follow up. And Soraya, we know each other. I will definitely follow up with you and pass along that information. But I wasn't aware of it, and we're without that kind of information coming forward, we're only encouraging this kind of behavior. Our silence, really, regardless of what happens with the union, can form a type of endorsement of this kind of behavior.
Oh, maybe I should just clear the air on that. I mean, your colleagues up on Eglinton at Fairbanks are fully aware of the circumstances. So, that's why I say I want to clear the air. Like that's common and public knowledge. The police were involved intimately in that issue on Fairbanks Station on Eglinton LRT.
Thanks so much. We're going to take a couple more questions as well. So I know that there's another question in the Q&A from Charles. So the question is, historically, Black and Indigenous communities are being treated less fairly by the police and the criminal justice system. It is one of the tenets of the BLM movement to call for defunding the police and increase resources for providing community support. What is Daniel's position with regards to working with the police, both on its construction sites and among the communities that reside in its development projects?
I'll jump in here. Thank you, Charles, for your question. On working with the police, we'll continue to do so on the investigation. As it relates to our construction sites in our communities, sorry, I've just done something to my computer. I'm not sure if you can still hear me.
We can.
We can hear you and see you.
As it relates to our construction sites and communities, we are looking at how we provide different or engage different services that provide similar support. So for security, for example, right now we are working with a local group from Regent Park that hires, it's a small Regent Park business that hires and trains young people from the neighborhood to provide security services. So as we look at our different events and construction sites in our commercial portfolio, we're looking at how we can engage locally to provide those services. When we have folks in distress around our presentation center or around the neighborhood that we're identifying, we work with Toronto Community Housing and the Salvation Army to provide support. So we do look at it sort of in a way that how do we engage with the local community, provide opportunities for economic development, whether it's through security or any of those services, but absolutely work with the police on things like the investigation, where their support and their work is critical to solving these types of hate crimes, but ensuring that it doesn't happen again.
Thanks, Hila. I know that we also have questions from folks who have their hands raised. So I am going to ask someone, I'm going to say Princess Ray. I'm going to unmute you, allow you to speak. You can ask your question.
Should I be on mute?
I've asked them to unmute. You have your hand raised. If not, we can move on. There's someone calling in from on the phone. So someone calling in from 416-845-5994. Please ask your question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking my call, and thank you very much to everyone involved tonight, and to the RPNA in particular for organizing this this event. I just want people to understand why it's so difficult for those of us living in Regent Park to have been victimized in this way, to have found a noose in one of our buildings, because it's such a despicable symbol, of course, historically. And in particular, Regent Park has prided itself on being an inclusive community. Generally, we get together in groups and activities and events across so many agencies, and in the Taste of Regent Park, and in the culinary and cultural, religious festivals, and so on. So it's hit us hard. And I want to know, though, how Daniels, how the police, how the construction industry is addressing this issue to to the community, the Black community in particular, and if there's anything that they have considered in terms of apologizing to the community and to explain that they understand and to communicate even all of the actions that they're undertaking now and that have been expressed in this meeting, but in terms of follow-up, because unfortunately in Regent Park there are many times we're left in the dark. We don't know about the results, for example, of many investigations into criminal activities. People sometimes are shot, people are assaulted, and there is not a lot of follow-up. And I'm wondering how this will be communicated, not just within this meeting, but going forward. Thank you.
So,
Thanks, Leonard.
Okay, so as a union representative from Local 27, I remember one of the first things that we did, I went in and I spoke to my colleagues, and one of the first things that we try to do is we reached out to the local ethnic newspapers and put a one-page ad within a week or two stating our position, stating that we condemn the act of having a noose on the job site. Right? So that's one of the things we did. And we reached out to the different communities or organizations, we said earlier, and condemn the act of racism and offer to support, and whatever support they needed, we were there, whether it be sending a representative like myself or Sean or whoever. We were there letting our voices be heard, and condemning the act of anti-Black racism. So that's what we did right off the top.
If I could add, with respect to the Daniels case, I mean, they were at a critical juncture when those nooses showed, and I think it's exceptional that Daniels, I'm going to borrow Sam Tassone's line, what they did was they shone the light on the problem. All too often, many firms decide to take the other path, which is let's try and hide it. Let's try and make this go away. Let's try and do this under the cover of darkness. And instead, what Daniels did was said, no, this is not something we will tolerate. We're going to shine a light on our job sites, highlight that this exists, but we're going to take corrective steps and remedies and take a hard look within our organization to try and change it. We're going to communicate with our partners, both in industry and labor, to work together and to find a solution. So, I think that really did provide a roadmap and pathway for other organizations that might be subjected to these accidents, to these incidents. I mean, at the end of the day, I do find that some of the most progressive employers often find themselves in these instances because they are progressive. They end up drawing that type of hatred, because that's what hate seeks, is to kill progressivity. And so, I've commended the folks at Daniels, I'll say it again, that what they did provided a roadmap. And so Ellis Don has done the same, right? They have their Enough campaign. Tridel also is taking a proactive step. These are leaders in our industries, and they're setting an example for some of the smallers that can look to and say, we're not gonna try and make this go away. We're gonna shine a light and we're gonna try and solve the problem. From our organization, our legal teams now will not negotiate these grievances away. Instead, we're gonna litigate it. We're gonna hold employers accountable to keep their job sites safe and our members safe and free from discrimination. And so, this is, I think a cultural change, it won't happen overnight. It takes a lot of effort and energy, but with commitment and a real desire to work together, I think we can really improve the situation.
Great. Thank you, Jason and Chris, and thanks for the question on the phone. We absolutely remain committed to providing information and updates to the community. So we will be making this recording, the full report, as well as translated summaries of the report available online, and we'll circulate that within the community. I also want to reiterate that this is the first of what we anticipate will be a number of updates. As I mentioned, while our investigation was concluded, the police investigation is ongoing. We are prepared to reopen our investigations should any new information come up, and we will continue to share that with the community at the appropriate times, whether that new information comes through Crime Stoppers, whether we are offering a reward if no anonymous tips do come forward. I also want to say, in respect to sort of shining a light and recognizing that this happened and the impact on the Regent Park community, part of that response is this town hall, but we were also with the community, a number of our team members, both Sam, Tassone, and I spoke 2 days following the incident to acknowledge what had happened and communicate our disgust at it, and the fact that there is and continues to be zero tolerance, and that stance continues today. So regardless of what happens on our sites, we have put mechanisms in place to make sure this gets reported, to make sure this gets escalated, whether that's in Regent Park or across the GTA. And we remain committed to doing that and sharing those efforts with the community.
Thanks so much, Hila. So I know that there were a couple of other questions, and for those of you that didn't necessarily have the full agenda, we're a good 40 minutes over time. And I really want to say thank you to all of our panelists who have joined us and stuck around and answered important questions from the community. So what I will say is I'm going to share my email. Many of you may have access to this already, but if you don't, it's there on the screen. And so if you have any additional questions, and questions even directed to panelists, please feel free to email me with those questions. You can also email me if you would like a copy of the report, as Hila was mentioning. So we've got the full report in English. We've also got summaries available in 7 languages. So we've got the summaries available in Bengali, Cantonese, Mandarin, Somali, as well as Vietnamese and Tamil. So if you require the translations, please let me know. These will also be available on our website, hopefully this week. And so we can also direct you there, and you'll be able to find all of those pieces there as well. Okay.
Maybe just before we end off, giving our co-hosts Marlene and Gail an opportunity to wrap us up.
Yeah, absolutely. Marlene and Gail.
Yes, I want to thank you all. Thank you so much at Daniels and Fatima and Hila and your crew for pulling all of this together. And thank you so much for all the people who came in and spoke. You've done an excellent job pulling all of this together. And yes, again, thank you for your patience. This has been very useful, and we're really pleased that you got it together. We look forward to further information, anything you can bring us. And we certainly look forward to hearing from the police again on an ongoing basis. And I give you the last word, Gail.
Yes, so thanks everybody for certainly putting this together. Thank you very much, Fatima, Hilia, and for the Daniels Corporation for putting this together. I know that this was a lot of work, so truly appreciate it. Thank you to the speakers. Powerful, definitely. We definitely appreciate the ideas that we're hearing. Of course, everybody on this call that knows me from the RPNA would tell you that I'm a person of action. So I'm looking for results. What are those outcomes? And that's for me, I think what we want to leave tonight with is the accountability piece. I think two things are really important here. Communication, we have to be talking to each other, and it's unfortunate that that communication line was broken between the police and the union. And I think that, and for sure, that is one of the things that we certainly want to have as a follow-up, some report back on what your investigation leads to on that. I personally believe that you don't only look at punishing someone, in terms of jail time, but you should also look at how can you help that person, support them, educate them. And I think that's important as part of a solution. So I'm excited. I am available to help when it comes to anything around anti-Black racism, but also importantly around anything related to Black people, Indigenous people, people of color. I think we all have a space on this earth, and it is up to us to change, right? It takes people, and I always say people over process. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Gail. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That's great. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.